Good evening and many thanks indeed for joining us on the 16th of June 2020. We have a lot lined up for you tonight, including the impeachment motion of Governor Anne Waiguru, who is the Kirinyaga governor. It seems that the wish by the members of the county assembly in Kirinyaga County to have the 67 senator listen to the impeachment motion and decide on it will just remain to be a wish after senators decided to have a special committee to look into the impeachment motion. We'll be giving you details about that. Also today, it is the International Day of the African Child, with COVID-19 putting the generation at risk. We'll be giving you details on what we have concerning this day that is marked today. You don't want to miss a discussion we are having tonight, which is on building regulations. We are having Dr. Catherine Githuka and Mr. Moses Opio from the School of Engineering here at Kenyatta University, of course, looking into why we have frequent cases of building collapsing in the country with no serious intervention being put into place. But before we get right into it, let's take a look at stories making headlines tonight. Waiguru's fate to be decided by a special committee of the Senate. Virus cases rise to 3,860 as 133 test positive. International Day for the African Child marked as COVID-19 puts the generation at risk. Ohangla musicians criticize how musician Abenyi Jachinga was buried in Kisumu. Welcome to our live broadcast. My name is Irene Mwangi, and with me tonight is Moses Gitonga, who is our sign language interpreter. To our top story, the government has extended the working hours for hotels and restaurants to up to 7:30 p.m. in the evening in the new review of slowly reopening the hospitality industry. However, Health Cabinet Secretary Mutahi Kagwe has warned on flouting the existing COVID-19 measures, even as 133 more people test positive of the virus, with the number of infections now standing at 3,860.
After petitioning the Ministry of Health, where restaurant operators wanted the government to extend their allowed operation time to 8 p.m., the Ministry of Health has issued new directives that all hotel and restaurants will operate up to 7:30 p.m. from the existing 5:30 p.m. closure time.
The operators are advised, however, that they must adhere to protocols that are provided at the Ministry of Health website. And we have also said that all restaurant workers must be tested prior to the opening of any restaurant or prior to the re-establishment of any restaurant. But we have also, from today, changed the protocol that once tested, a hotel or restaurant worker will not need another test in the 14 days that we have been giving them.
According to Health Cabinet Secretary Mutahi Kagwe, the move to extend the operation hours is an appreciation to restaurant operators who have been following the government directives on controlling the spread of coronavirus. However, Kagwe has warned that all eateries that flout the Ministry of Health directives will risk having their license permanently revoked.
Wakati kulikuwa na quarantine mahotelini, kuna hoteli mbili ambazo wafanyikazi wa mahoteli ndio waliumbukiza wale ambao walikuja hiyo quarantine. We would not be able to open the restaurants if the restaurant owners and those who work in restaurants were not behaving in a manner that they are. We have not noticed any positive cases because of opening the restaurants, because they are observing the rules.
The move comes as a relief in the hospitality industry at a time where the government has been struggling to reopen back the Kenyan economy, the number of infections continuing to surge further, with part of Kenyans seemingly floating some of the set COVID-19 measures.
Let me emphasize, bars are not open. Bars are not open. We are talking about the restaurants, so that people can be able to get something to eat, even as they head for home, in the event that that is what they wish to do, and also to give a bit of a lifeline to our restaurants and tourism facilities, because we know that they are going through a very difficult time.
On Tuesday, 133 more people have tested positive of COVID-19 in the last 24 hours. Nairobi County has recorded 86 infections today. Mombasa with 27, Kiambu 7, Busia 5, Murang'a, Kilifi, Kajiado and Migori counties with 2 cases each, while Machakos has recorded 1 infection. However, 40 more people have recovered from the virus, with the number of recoveries now at 1,328. 1 more person has succumbed, raising the number of fatalities to 105. Chris Sambu, Kutv, Nairobi.
Kenyans and the government have today recognized the 29th celebration of the International Day of the African Child, with the Ministry of Health launching new breastfeeding and immunization measures for children despite the ongoing COVID-19 pandemic. As Grace Josephine also reports, children aged below 2 years should not wear masks as they risk suffocation.
Ministry of Health, in collaboration with the Ministry of Labor and Social Services, has supported the International Day of the African Child 2020, celebrated every 16th day of June every year since 1991, by giving child-friendly products despite the ongoing pandemic.
Having realized that immunization is coming down because of the COVID, we have enhanced IPC practices at the child welfare clinics to make sure that the caregivers are assured of their children coming for immunization without having to get the COVID. We have made sure that the scheduling of appointment is in such a way that we avoid crowding, especially in the public facilities. And also, we have made sure that those staffs who are attending the children in these clinics have their temperatures taken every morning.
The second high-impact intervention of the Ministry of Health is breastfeeding, with the head of the Preventive and Promotive Health hailing mothers who have undertook the 6-month exclusive breastfeeding journey before revealing the government's safe breastfeeding procedures.
In this phase of COVID, I want to encourage mothers, even when you are found to be COVID positive, to continually breastfeed, but make sure that you are putting on, you wear a mask, and then you have minimal contact with the child, meaning that when you are not breastfeeding, it is good for that child to be taken care by somebody else, not to avoid infection.
COVID-19 has just added to the alarming infant mortality rate in the country and across Africa at large. Implementation of extra precautions in the newborn units in government hospitals are set to curb the growing concern.
Healthcare workers who have been capacity built to make sure that they provide working, they are given capacity building in managing the newborn units to make sure that the outcome of the sick neonates is good. And also we have scaled up one of our very high impact intervention called kangaroo mother care for those who are born premature. And lastly, that we use cloexidine in the cord care that reduces infections during this very fragile time.
As Kenyans joined the business aspect that came with COVID-19 of manufacturing masks and hand sanitizers, very few manufacturers considered they will be used by children below 5 years of age, which has now been officially stipulated by the government.
During this time of COVID, children under 2 years are not recommended to put on a mask because they actually reduce the oxygen supply. The under 5-year children in his personal space, that is in a car, home, should also not wear masks because this is to avoid suffocation because they may tend to sleep.
The Health Ministry has also announced free psychological support to child caregivers should they feel constrained or overwhelmed in any way mentally during these times. Grace Josephine, Kutv, Nairobi.
Thank you for that report, Grace Josephine. Let us now shift gears to matters politics. The impeachment motion of Kirinyaga Governor Anne Waiguru will now be determined by a team of 11 senators and not a committee of the whole House. It is a blow to a section of Kirinyaga's members of the County Assembly who wanted the debate of the motion to be had by the whole House of the Senate. The decision was made by a vote of 45 in favor of the committee against 14 who were opposed to it.
Order.
Mr. Speaker, on a point of order.
We must conclude. Order.
Mr. Speaker, you told me you'll give me a stance.
Senator Murkomen, I have given you a lot of time.
On a point of order.
Please.
It's a point of order,
Please.
Mr. Speaker.
Senator, leader, can you conclude? I'll give you a
point of order, Speaker. Point of order, Mr. Speaker.
Conclude, Senator.
It was a heated sitting in the Senate today as senators decided on which method the motion against Governor Anne Waiguru will go through. Those calling for the committee were as passionate as those calling for a plenary as senators engaged in exchanges. This is evident as the senators exchanged harsh words.
Mr. Speaker, you are correct. You are right. We must tell the public the reason why there is a clamor here between whether it's the plenary or whether it's the rest of the House is because the senators who are here know very well that if a committee is chosen and for whatever reason they go and clear the governor, that is the end of the matter.
Orengo to impute improper motive in this House when we know very clearly that the impeachment motion has been brought by the County Assembly of Kirinyaga. So for him to continue lecturing here on nonsense, basically, it is inappropriate.
Although ODM leader Raila Odinga had claimed he will not have a hand in Waiguru's impeachment by soliciting senators in ODM to save her, close allies to Odinga, led by Senator James Orengo, rooted for Waiguru's fate to be decided by a special committee.
Some people have done so well, they are not looking for justice, they are looking for somebody's head. And that head is not for Salome. That head is for somebody. Waiguru's head is being asked for not by the County Assembly. I can tell you, and I have the evidence.
Kirinyaga Senator Charles Kibiru called for a plenary hearing, claiming that Kirinyaga people were seeking for justice and corruption might take center stage should a committee route be taken.
I can tell you, we are no fools. We did not come to Nairobi the other day. We know what has been happening. That one you can take to the bank.
Senators voted to have the committee investigate the charges leveled against her, with Speaker Kenneth Lusaka giving the team 10 days to complete the task and table a report in the House. According to the County Government Act, Article 33, subsection 6, if the special committee reports that the particular of any allegation against the governor have not been substantiated, further proceedings shall not be taken under the section in respect to that allegation. Or, if the committee finds that the particulars of allegations have been substantiated, the Senate shall, after according the governor an opportunity to be heard, vote on the impeachment charges.
Shakespeare said, though this be madness, there is a method to it. This Senate has found a method to interrogate serious, intricate issues. If we walk away from such methods, which ourselves have agreed to do them, I expect all the chairpersons of committees to resign.
Members who will serve in the committee include nominated Senator Abshiro Halake, Trans Nzoia Senator Michael Mbito, Mwangi Paul Githiomi of Nyandarua County, nominated Senator Beth Mugo, Lamu Senator Anwar Loitiptip, Philip Mbaye from Kajiado County, Kakamega Senator Cleopas Malala, nominated Senator Britus Kwamboka, Kilifi Senator Stewart Mazayo, nominated Senator Judith Pareno, and Homa Bay Senator Moses Kajwang. Governor Anne Waiguru was impeached by 23 MCAs against the whole 33 members for abuse of office. She is accused of taking 10.6 million shillings for non-existent travels and abuse of office. Irene Mwangi, Kutv. Moving on, handling of burials in the wake of the novel coronavirus outbreak in Kenya has burst several communities' bubbles, stirring outrage as some bodies are buried hurriedly as opposed to others when the government is embarking on cutting COVID-19 transmission through burial ceremonies. The contentious demise on the send-off of musician Bernard Anyango last week is still raising eyebrows among musicians from the Lake region.
The contentious death and funeral of Ohangla musician Bernard Onyango, aka Abeni Jachiga, has elicited radical feelings among artists from the Lake region. A group of Ohangla musicians have united to criticize the matter in which his death and burial has been handled and turn their anger on the political leadership from the region. Speaking to journalists at Shujaa Mall in Embakasi East, the enraged musicians expressed disappointment with the leaders whom they claimed to have supported on a number of occasions during political campaigns.
Hatutaki kuona nyimbo zetu mnapiga kwa shughuli zenu za kisiasa. Paka mtuambie kwa nini mumezika Abeni Jachiga kama umbwa. Why? We want to know.
Mbona msanii akazikwa hivyo kwa uchungu, kwa giza, hata bila taa kama maskini? Kwa sababu tunalia huu maskini ya wasanii, tunajaribu kama wasanii tunashikana. Tafadhali viongozi wetu pia mshikane na sisi, kwa sababu kama ni kiongozi wakati anasimama na jina ya mwanamuziki na muinua juu. Na I think kama sio mwanamuziki kuinua viongozi hawatajulikana, ama ni uongo.
Mia wakati mnatuhitaji mnatutumia. Mwingine akishatoka hadi mnapigiwa simu amwezi tusaidia. Ikifika ni wakati tunataka usaidizi wenu, amko na sisi, lakini wakati mnatutaka mnatutafuta mpaka kwa manyumbani zetu. Sasa hakuna muziki wetu mtatumia kwa hizo masiasa zenu.
The artists also petitioned President Uhuru Kenyatta to ensure the money he announced for the artists reaches them, claiming that they haven't seen even a coin. In the hours of Saturday morning, police finally buried Jachiga at 2:30 a.m. at his Chiga home, Kisumu County, after locals had blocked his planned burial on Friday. Reporting for KUTV, Motegi K. Martin.
Thank you, Martin Mutegi, for that particular report. Of course, it is a concern concerning that particular burial, and given the issue of cultural exchange, we're not used to the normal people being buried hurriedly, although at times it should be done according to the measures set in place by the Ministry of Health. Moving on, the brutal cold murder of an M-Pesa security guard in Mwangi has heightened the need for security intervention in the area, with locals now fearing for their lives. This and more in our County News Wrap.
Residents of Mwangi town, Kutv County, now fear for their lives after a 65-year-old watchman was killed by 3 armed bandits in the wee hours of his morning shift. At around 4:30 a.m. Monday morning, locals woke up to an M-Pesa shop security guard with deep panga cuts on his head, which he eventually succumbed to while receiving treatment at Mwangi Level 4 Hospital. Locals that own neighboring shops to the scene of the incident cite that the high level of insecurity in the area demand intensified police patrols, since residents are already doing their part by community policing.
Wakapata washman ambaye alikuwa in charge hapo, wakamkata na panga, but other washman responded na wakaita those officers who are on patrol. They responded very fast na hao wakora walimanage kutoroka.
Mwenye aliuawa leo ni baba yangu. Sasa nashangaa kwa nini tunapunguza mapema na watu wanabaki wakiuawa na wezi.
Hivyo mimi kukuja nimekuta mlango iko wazi ya M-Pesa. Nikakuta damu ya soja hapo. Sasa kutoka hapo na saa hiyo stima zimewaka kuwaka. Ni hapa tu. Kozi hakuna mtu anaweza toka Nairobi akuja atuimbie hapa Mwangi. Ni watu hapa tu.
Elsewhere, Nyeri County government has commenced distribution of relief food to over 10,000 households affected by COVID-19 pandemic. Nyeri Governor Mutahi Kahiga has said the initiative will cushion vulnerable families against starvation, as he received contributions from Capwell Industries.
Nyeri County has been selected as among the 10 counties that we are taking directly as part of this donation. We brought here today, Your Excellency, 13 tons of maize meal, that is 550 bales, worthy 780,000.
Our initial set aside is 10 million Kenya shillings. That is now being boosted by what is being given by our partners. So that is the kind of money we are talking about, and that is in the budget that is ending June 30th.
Moving on to the northern part of Kenya, political leaders in Isiolo County have held deliberations with members of the county security team with an agenda to intensify the war against drugs following the seizing of numerous bank consignments in the area.
Bangi imeharibu watoto wetu, kete imeharibu watoto wetu. Tumesema sasa tutakuwa na common approach ya kupigana na haya mambo. Tukiwa na viongozi wetu wa kitaifa, viongozi wa county, sisi watu wa national government, wale ambao ni watu wa kuchaguliwa ma elected leaders, lakini tutataka tuende mpaka mashinani pia tuhusishe hata mwananchi wa kawaida.
Tumeangalia dawa ya kulevya ni aina mbili, kuna zile zinaendelea tangu zamani ndani ya Isiolo, bangi, kete na mambo kama haya. Lakini sasa kuna biashara kubwa ya madawa ambayo inatoka pande ya Ethiopia kupitia Marsabit, kupitia Isiolo, sehemu za Merti, kupitia Gotu na mpaka Meru na kuelekea kule.
Barely 7 days ago, the government deployed special police unit personnel drawn from the anti-narcotics and anti-terror police units in the county to lead in the fight against the drug threat after 2 civilians were recently arrested offering bang from Ethiopia and Somalia to Isiolo and Nairobi respectively. Grace Josephine, Kutv, Nairobi.
With our story by Grace Josephine, we take a look at our word of the day tonight, which is the word motion. It is to propose for discussion and resolution at a meeting or legislative assembly. Example in a sentence: Waiguru's impeachment motion to be decided by an 11-member Senate special committee. On the other side of the break, we'll be having a discussion with Dr. Catherine Githuka and Mr. Moses Opio, where we'll be talking about building regulations. A lot of buildings have been collapsing in the country across the year. Each year we have been reporting a case of a building collapsing. The recent one being in Kericho County. We'll be having that discussion. You don't want to miss that. See you on the other side of the break.
I'm the CEO, founder of Dhika Kitchen Enterprises. We are based in Dhika. We deal in energy saving jikos and other gas related or energy saving jikos.
The Juakari operators and others, our saloonists, our mamboga, our barbers, our economy to a large extent depends on you. We cannot allow Kenyans to die because of non-distancing in any sector. So those of you who are carrying out the hair-cutting business, in barbershops, in saloons, I am appealing to you today. Ensure that social distancing, fumigation of your working places, masks are used at all times. Just assume that everybody is positive and now deal with that situation. Participation of our citizens in the fight against the disease would be our key success factor.
Welcome back. Tonight, we are looking into the collapse of buildings in the country. These cases have been rife, which has raised a concern among stakeholders, especially those in the construction industry. Tonight, we are having Dr. Catherine Githuko, who is from the School of Engineering in Kenyatta University, and Mr. Moses Opio, who is also a lecturer here in Kenyatta University in the School of Engineering, to talk about what has been the cause of this and get it into perspective. Welcome, Mr. Opio and Dr. Catherine.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right. Now, we cannot talk about finding a solution without talking about the cause of a problem. Perhaps what has been the cause of building collapsing every now and then in this country, because an year goes by without having even a case of a building collapsing in the country. I'll start with you, Dr. Catherine.
Well, maybe to start with, I would wish to say that in any construction project, we have different people who are involved. We have a developer, of course, the person who is owning the project in terms of he comes and says, this is what I want. Then we have the architects, we have the engineers, we have the quantity surveyors, we have the contractor. Mm-hmm. Those people need to work together if a building is going to be sound, you know? Mm-hmm. And if any of them does something wrong, then something will go wrong. Mm-hmm. In most cases, I think you find when buildings collapse, probably we can remove the architects a little bit, because you find that it is maybe the problem of the design, it could also be the problem of construction. Mm-hmm. So the engineer, the contractor. Mm-hmm. Of course, the problem can still go back to the architect, because sometimes a client comes to the architect and says, this is what I need. The architect does the architectural design, mm-hmm. and then the architect may go look for an engineer for this client, or even the client may also have their own engineers. Yeah. How qualified the engineer is, we may not know. No, yeah. You find that many people just want to save money, and therefore maybe the architect will get an engineer, maybe not an engineer even, we'll go to a technician, because the technician will charge less. And tells this technician, please design this for me. Mm-hmm. That design, I think there could be something wrong, because this is not somebody who is supposed to do the design, but mm-hmm. they still do the design. Yeah. in that context. Mm-hmm. Many clients also do not value the input of an engineer so much. Right. So you find that a client, when mm-hmm. An engineer comes and says, this is what I'll charge, they decide, I think I can do without an engineer. Mm-hmm. And then they go along with the architect. Mm-hmm. Again, an architect who has not done structural design. Yeah. They have done a bit of design in school, mm-hmm. but it is not as to the depth of the depth the engineer has carried that design out. Mm-hmm. So you find that when that building finally is constructed, mm-hmm. there will be something wrong. Right. There may be something wrong, and mm-hmm. therefore we will not be surprised that if it comes down.
All right. Yeah. Mr. Opio, concerning what Dr. Catherine has said, of course, for a building to stand, there are a lot of people who come into the picture for that building to stand. Perhaps from what you have witnessed over time, can you identify some of the gaps that we have? She has talked about the architecture and the technician. Somebody saying, I don't need an engineer, let me try a technician, which brings a problem. Perhaps you will highlight some of the issues or gaps you have noticed in your time in the engineering sector.
Yeah, just to again reinforce what she said, when she talked about the construction team, mm-hmm. we have, like she said, there's a client, mm-hmm. we have the design team, and then the regulators. Mm-hmm. Now, the design team, communication between the design team and the construction team is very important. Mm-hmm. What we usually see during this normal construction, like the Juakali construction, you find that once the design team, the architect and his team have done their work, mm-hmm. and the drawing is given to the client, mm-hmm. they're out. Contractor. And you find that now contractor now, again, when is restricted. Remember, the contractor is an employee of the client. So sometimes there's a saying that says, who pulls the piper. Yeah, that
whoever
one.
pays the piper blows the tune.
Exactly. So when your client tells you now, Mimi, you tell him, I want ABCD. Tells you, Staki, sina hiyo pesa. Is that a shortcut? You give that shortcut. So we got several gaps.
Yeah.
The gaps that I've seen is where now, like the regulators, they're supposed to be on site every now and then. I remember when you're an engineer on site, once the building is at first course, like foundation goes to slab, you must be there and sign a document. Then window seal, like that. Each and every stage you are there. So you make control. You control the design. And if there's a mistake, you have a right to tell the contractor, pull this whole thing down. But you see now, you pull it down at the cost of who?
The client.
The cost of the client or the contractor.
Yeah.
If it is a government building, it's a contractor who made a mistake. So you find that the client now will do away with you. Because remember, the charge is per hour for an engineer to come on site to do that. I think it should be around 12,000. It was raised per hour. That is, and there are different categories. There's a graduate engineer when he comes. So that is per hour. So if an engineer comes on site and it takes like 3 hours on a site, you can imagine the amount of money that the client will have to pay. So they do away with that one.
All right.
So that's where some of the things that I think need to be looked at.
Right, there's a building that collapsed in Kariobangi North around 3 years ago. And what was shocking about that building, we could see almost gas coming out from the foundation of the building. Perhaps our viewers can take a look at that particular clip so that they can get the perspective of what happened in Kariobangi North. From that clip that you have seen, we want Dr. Catherine here to tell us, many people were shocked from what was coming out of that building. And for some, they could not even understand what was going on. Perhaps what can a common mwananchi do before getting into a building? Because for some, moving from one building to the next is just, a day away. Just decide, let me move from this building to the next. But how can a common mwananchi look into a building and ascertain the safety even without having to have the government come into place? What can I do to provide my safety myself?
I think it's a bit difficult for a common mwananchi to look at a building and say, there's something wrong here. It's because especially if the designs were done well, but sometimes if the designs were wrong, you may find a few key things that one can maybe have a look at. Like sometimes if you have a beam that is running across in a building and you're seeing that the beam is seemingly sagging in a way, that is telling you some things are not right.
Yeah.
We have cracks. And there is that crack wind that is allowed that you should not even be able to see it.
Yeah.
If you are looking at a crack and something is telling you here there is a problem, please run. We a few things, but it is very difficult anyway for the common mwananchi to actually say that there is something wrong until the building comes down, because things go wrong inside. It is the steel yielding, it is the concrete pouring out, and the whole thing comes down before you realize that there was something going wrong. With
the building.
Yeah. Some of these failures actually are gradual. And then finally, the collapsing is the culmination of many things that have been happening with time.
All right.
Yes, except for, of course, those that collapse while in construction, which is a serious issue, because that is a building that cannot support its own weight. What are we talking about? And you find actually in many cases, we also have these issues where a building was designed for 3 floors and the client and the contractor decide, the foundation is so strong, it can actually take five floors, so we can go up. And as a client, I'm like, You mean I can have
make more money? Yeah.
So we have those issues that are going on, and it's very difficult for a common mwananchi to even know. Don't go there because that building was meant to be 2 floors. Now it is 5.
Yeah.
It is very difficult.
All right.
Yeah.
That is really a concern. But perhaps for you, Mr. Opio, looking at the way that building in Kariobangi North, looking at the face value, it all looked, pretty, and the structure was quite fine, but it was ailing from inside. Perhaps what can you point out that a common mwananchi should say, okay, this is not the step I want to take, this is a ticking bomb?
Yeah, now before I go to that, let me just add on to what she has said. We have, like the design team, there is a design philosophy. Design philosophy has 2 things. It is, you design the limit state design, and then there's serviceability limit state. Serviceability limit state, if you find a beam is sagging, we have provisions in the code which allows, this allowable sag, that if it exceeds that, then of course that puts a question mark. And as she said, rightfully said, a common man, how do you know it has exceeded?
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And then when the crack exceeds a given value, as a common person, you might not understand it.
Yeah.
So we need some regulation. For example, we know that when a building is completed, the engineer should sign and the client is given letter of completion. In the letter of completion is where we say this building has been assessed for integrity this year. Once we have a policy, I'm saying there's a gap also in the policy where we say every building countrywide, every building that, I'm not talking about the small to the KM buildings, these small ones, no, I'm talking about 3 to 4 floors.
Yeah.
Like, the history of Kenya in construction industry, African contractors were not allowed to put up structures beyond 3 floors. Those ones were left for Wazungus, by the way.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you meet Professor Gishaga, who is a history of engineering in Kenya, he'll tell you all those stories.
Yeah.
And that's why when Lillian Towers was to be built, he was refused. He could not go beyond. And he had to go to Kenyatta when Kenyatta was alive, to be given authority to talk to Andrew Ngumba, who was the, to get the authority to go beyond. And that's how he did. Authority from the president. They were not allowed, CBD. But now, Africans were not allowed because we didn't have that knowledge. So you find that going back to now certificate of completion, we say that we need to have a policy in place where now buildings should be inspected after 3 or 4 years.
Yeah.
Now, when a client or a tenant goes to a house, he should ask for the same. When was this building inspected? And be given a copy of that inspection. Then you are sure. Because otherwise, visually,
you can't tell.
You can't. Because when the previous tenant leaves the house, they paint it. That's superficial. After 3 months, you start seeing parts coming down.
The cracks.
More paints and all that. So we need to have something authentic where we do structural audit or integrity assessment of a building each and every time, so that we are sure that this building can sustain the way that it has.
All right. Now, a few years ago, when we had many cases of building collapsing and people losing their lives and property, President Uhuru Kenyatta, of course, gave the National Construction Authority a mandate to audit all the buildings in Nairobi County. But even after that, the cases continued to be witnessed. Even after them doing the audit, we still had cases being there. Perhaps we start with you, Mr. Moses Opio. Why are we having agencies which are there to look into some of these crises, but still we are continuing to report cases of building collapsing even after that?
Yeah, thank you very much. That's a very nice question, because I remember when we had a conference, National Construction, second conference in KICC. This, we raised it. I think we presented a paper with a former student here, Bulut, and we were looking at why. Luckily, the director of Inspectorate, Nyakiongora, QS, the quantity surveyor, Nyakiongora was there. And he mentioned, the problem we have in Kenya is we set up departments, for example, and he actually cited lack of funding.
All right.
Lack of funding has really, made them not work. And again, it is not under NCA.
All right.
It is under Ministry of Housing.
Yeah.
But they collaborate with NCA
to be able to work towards
together.
that. Yeah.
They don't have specialists. They don't have the equipment. Fortunately, and now let me thank her. Our KU, Civil Engineering Department, we have the equipment. We do have more portable equipment. The Schmidt hammer, we have quite a number. We have, Schmidt hammer is the one we use for testing the strength of concrete, the compressive strength. Then we have the crack microscopes. I think we have around 4 of them. But you see the problem, we have these things here.
Yeah.
Those people have a problem out there. None of them has ever come and said, look, you people, we have a problem.
Yeah.
Can you help us solve this problem?
Yeah.
No. The problem here, as I think we talked in some fora, the grid.
Yeah.
Somebody in his own way, he goes there, looks at a building, because maybe there's some little money to be gotten. Look, the university is here not just to teach. We are here also to go and solve problems out there.
Yeah.
And we have the expertise. But you find because there could be some money there, somebody does not want to involve, let's say, the universities.
Yeah.
Because to me, I think the nerve, when you want a good economical, performance, go get economists from the university to give you advice.
Yeah.
But when you take the, sorry, it becomes bad because you cannot.
It waters down the whole process, so to speak.
Nyakiongora, he confided in us and told us, look, they don't have funding. Without funding, they can't move.
Yeah.
And without movement, it means they're just there, and so things are happening. They go there and they just look like any other person.
Yeah.
You know.
They sort of don't have the support that is needed, yet they are required to do a certain sort of objective.
Yes, because when a building comes down, just like when you go for X-ray, it checks on your bones. The same thing, when a building comes down, we go there, we do the test, we check on what was the spacing of reinforcement here. Was it followed according to the drawing? How do you do that without the equipment? Because these things are right embedded inside the concrete. You cannot just go and... So we need funding and we need a proper inspectorate. My suggestion here is we have almost 6 departments in the universities in civil engineering. They just get even 2 people per university. They form a conglomerate under... Because you're talking about research here.
Yeah.
With those type of people, once a problem comes, they can easily go to the universities, come up with an issue, bring it back, and get a solution.
They get a solution. Of course, due to research, Dr. Catherine, of course, you can add into what we have talked about, the National Construction Authority, and also in the counties. We had 6 days ago a building collapse in Kericho County, and some have asked, do we have these systems in the counties, or are we having a situation of laxity, so to speak?
Of course, the systems are there. Maybe I'll start by saying that you find, he is right in saying probably funding is not there. You find that if there is a problem, like the Kariobangi thing, then everybody wakes up, you know. And you find even NCA tries to even employ people. I remember one time my daughter had just finished campus, civil engineering, and she was a part of the team. And they are paid very little, actually, about 10K per month, so that they go working around, and they have just finished college. What do they know? So their work was just to go check the sites, and if somebody is not wearing, I don't know, boots, I don't know what, they close the site. That has nothing to do with the building. It may have some indication that maybe the people on site are not the qualified people. But they have not looked at the building and, you know.
They have not gone down to the real problem.
They have not gone to the real problem. So I think what he's saying may be right, the funding and It's a big problem. Everybody is saying there is no money, so I don't know how that will be sorted out.
Right.
When you look at the county governments, the systems are there. They have those departments that are supposed to take care of, you know, inspectorate and even the designs. But you find, again, they are very thin. You know, like in a whole county, maybe there is one engineer. If that engineer is the one that is going checking all the, and even the NCA department, they don't have, as he said, they don't have the people that they are required to have. There is that ratio that should be there looking at our country, what is going on, the development level, but they don't have. So you find the engineer is like, I can't afford to go to this site today and another one and another one. So they may just visit one and they don't even have the time. And of course, without mentioning the issue of equipment, what are they using?
To ascertain this.
To ascertain the integrity of the building.
Right.
There is the gap there. I think there is a gap there that somebody should seriously think about how to close it, maybe through training, as we keep saying. We have postgraduate courses, we can call them that. You know, like after your degree, you can still go for some short courses for skills development. And, you know, but somebody has to fund.
Yeah, somebody has to fund.
That is the problem,
All right, I'll say this with the risk of being called judgmental, but corruption seems to be ailing the construction industry, which of course I would say that you might admit to it. Perhaps what could be the solution, or could you point out, Dr. Catherine, how corruption is getting into this construction industry, which now creates loss of people and loss of property every now and then?
I think corruption, it's really a big mole in the system that I don't know how it won't be sorted out. Definitely there is a lot of that corruption, like you find, like he said at the beginning, there's a client here who comes and tells you, I only have this much and I want my building up. You find yourself, you want to help, but if you help the right way, then there will be no building, because that money is not enough. So you find yourself compromising on the materials. I don't know who does that, because in most of the cases it's maybe the contractor who brings in the wrong material. We are saying the design actually talks of sand, river sand, you know. He goes and brings quarry dust, and we use that, you know, because it is cheap. So the corruption is there. Corruption is there. And an architect comes to site, and because he's given something small by the contractor, not to say that building, I'm talking of a case that I have seen. A building imepimwa vibaya. So instead of right angles, it has some other angles somewhere. You look at it, you see some walls. If they were to continue, they would meet at one point, you know. But the architect is supposed to check on such. He says it's okay and he goes away.
Right.
I mean, corruption, I think it's so inbuilt in Kenyans. We need God's intervention.
Of course, that has been, of course, the call of Kenyans, saying that it is a dragon, which no one's come out to slay it. Mr. Opeo, perhaps highlight what is the crisis that we are facing in the construction industry in terms of corruption, and how it has led to the negative effects and the losses that we continue to see in the country due to the collapse of buildings.
Corruption is the elephant in the house. That elephant in the house, how to slay it, I don't know. I know we do in our curriculum, we have a course, a unit, I think, on, it's on, ethics, right? Actually ethics. And there we mention some of those things. But I think the temptation is so high that they put an X, but when we can meet somewhere over a rib, goat rib, and then we sort out some of those things. Can you imagine construction of a road? And this one I'll mention. That diversion from Thika to the service lane, right? How much it costs? Yes, you go and inquire. It costs a lot of money, over 5 million to KU.
All right.
That road alone. Can you imagine a scenario where instead of a thickness of 6 inches, you put 4. Who will realize? But that 2 inches or 1 inch is a big saving, because 1 kilometer of road is actually, is it 50 million? One kilometer only.
Alone, yeah.
So you can imagine the amount you'll save by just that one.
Reducing that
Corruption here is very, in construction industry, I would say is the leading one.
All right. I want us to look at a clip here, which happened in 1998 during the famous terror attack. And we saw the building of the cooperative bank come down, but the American embassy, which was just next to the Coop bank, still remained standing still. Let's take a look at that particular video. You have seen that video, and Kenyans have been asking question why the cooperative bank building came down tumbling, but the building for American embassy was standing still even despite that bomb attack. Perhaps what could have been different in that particular architecture of that building, or what was different in that particular case? I'll start with you, Mr. Opio.
Yeah, that was an unfortunate situation. And terrorism is with us to stay. There's no way. It's like the new threat that we have, especially in the country's economic and... what's the philosophy of a terrorist? The philosophy of a terrorist is to create more chaos, to disorder, and to hurt people. So when they came here, they wanted to hurt the American people, but of course, unfortunately, the American facility was in Kenya. And it happened that the facility was situated in a very busy road, that is Uhuru Highway, Haile Selassie Avenue, and Moi Avenue. Very, very, and Kenya Railways opposite. We are talking about a place with very high density of people. So they hit us well, because we lost over 230, I think, those who died, Kenyans. I think around 8 Americans died, and around 4,000 injured. Some cannot see. The question here is, those who are injured, I remember Kamodo was then the minister, and they were meeting with Bushnell in one of the cooperative bank building. They only escaped with cuts. So those who are in cooperative bank, they were just cuts. Those who died were because of the pressure, impact from shelves or whatever. But the building itself remained intact. Unfortunately, Ufundi Cooperative, which I think that time had a secretarial college, collapsed. The problem here is, as you asked, just like you questioned, what could have happened? From interviews with the people, I was told, just like she had put it, Ufundi Cooperative was supposed to have been 3 floors. I think the cooperative, after getting good money, they decided to add another 2 floors. It was 5 floors finally. So we've tried researching on the contractor of that building and the engineer. We don't get them. But we have to know, American embassy, all American facilities, they're built according to federal standards. They can sustain...
an attack?
Yeah, they can sustain.
The impact of that?
Yes, they can sustain it. Because like it was 230 kg of that bomb thing, which translates, bomb is equated to TNT, Trinitotoluene. So it came to around something kilonewtons, very strong indeed, but American could sustain it. But you see, we had our own building, Cooperative Bank, which sustained the same shock waves, but never came down. So it means either corruption played down in this other building, or the design was not as per. Let me say, Ufundi to me must have been built earlier. The early buildings, just like where we are now, the walls are load-bearing. Now, load-bearing walls means now this masonry, it carries the weight. Any small displacement, collapse, the whole building comes down. But now when it comes to framed buildings, like cooperative building, all these they're like partition, claddings. They're more or less like claddings. So should they come, should they, let's say, collapse, the weight of the building is still carried by the columns and the beams.
So they'll still remain? They
still remain. And that's why you see most buildings, they put on the columns, the beams, and then later on is when they fill the spaces now with Darugu stones. So those Darugu stones don't carry any weight. They can collapse, but the weight is carried by that one. So the question is, was the Fundi building, the walls, were they load-bearing or not load-bearing? We need such investigation to get to know. We know that Cooperative Bank, I think it was designed by Gibbs Africa. Well, we have not gotten yet the drawing, but once we get them, at least we now know the difference
in the two. Perhaps, Dr. Catherine, do you hold the same opinion in terms of looking what happened in that particular sad terror attack that we had in the country? Looking at how maybe, because we have now realized that terror activities will somewhat be a part of us, perhaps in creating some of this building to avoid some of those scenarios and protecting ourselves. Is that what we should be looking at moving forward?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, he's right, and we normally say when you are designing, you can design even a building that can withstand a bomb. There are provisions for that. The question is, like you look at the probability. What are the probability? What is, even when we design for earthquake, when we design, we are asking what is the probability that there will be an earthquake, so that this building comes down because of earthquake. So when you find that the probability is so low, you find yourself not designing for earthquake, unless there are rules in that particular place. Like I know there are countries that you have to take care of earthquake, you have to take care of weed, because there are strong weeds. Here in Kenya we say our earthquake is so small. So we say during the design you can actually take care of so many things, but of course they will cost money. They will cost money, and therefore, the balance has to be there. So there is this guy, was he Saddam Hussein? Where he used to hide, it couldn't be bombed.
The bunker,
the bunker could not be bombed. It is still a construction, business. So if the person who is designing that bunker has to look at all items that. What are the risks?
What are the risks?
And it also it depends on the importance of the building.
In
many cases, even as we are doing, we normally apply safety factors.
Depending on
the importance of the building. If a building is to carry to house people, you put higher factors and all that, as you do the design. So it is most probable that probably the American embassy was done, of course, with that in mind.
Looking at the risk in mind, of course.
It was reinforced properly, and as he said, the cooperative building is on columns. When you put so many, it's expensive, but the building can withstand quite a bit. So I do agree with what he's saying.
All right. Yeah. Thank you so much for making time, Dr. Catherine Githuku and Mr. Moses Opio, of course, trying to get an insight. This is a topic that we can discuss even deeper. We cannot get to the nitty-gritty of each and every sector or each and every concern we should look into. But I think for now, we'll be having that. Of course, we'll be involving you later, looking into the construction industry and what we should look at into looking the risk and how we should look at moving forward. That has been Dr. Catherine Githuko and Mr. Moses Opio. Of course, we are looking into the construction industry and why we are having the cases of frequent collapse of building. Of course, they're trying to put things into perspective. What are some of the gaps we should look into? And of course, it is a discussion that we can have, and I hope we have been able to get some of the things that we should look into, even as we get into a new building, even as we put in policies that will help the country. We are taking a short break, but once we return, we'll be returning with more. Do stay tuned.
You're not supposed to be here, we are done.
Hey, Sasha.
Wacha ni chiachiri.
Was employed you.
Are you here for business or pressure?
The tuition.
Tuition.
Ariana.
Diana tafuta nguo. Pneumonia itakuwa.
Naitwa Reina.
My name is London.
You're dressed for the occasion.
Mimi nimerejestiwa hii tuition. Mbona unanifusa?
Kwani walikuwa wanachagua wasichana aje? Swali. Fry sinapita msuri alafu kunde inakuja inatoka. Walikuchagua aje wewe kwa hii tuition?
Welcome back. Let us now look on matters sports. The Sports Dispute Tribunal went on 30th the rule on the Kenyan Premier League current season status, whose cancellation has been contested by KPL Limited. However, the ruling will heavily depend on the tribunal determination of credibility questions raised of individuals who appeared for the two parties who opposed to the cancellation. On April 30th, FKF President Nick Mwangi announced the league will not resume after suspension in mid-March due to COVID-19 and announced Gor Mahia champions. He consequently submitted to the Confederation of African Football (CAF) that Gor will represent the country in the next season CAF Champions League competition. But KPL Limited disagreed with Mwangi and moved to SDT, challenging the decision jointly with KPL side Chemelil Sugar. That's all we had for you for Kutv News at 9. Thank you for keeping us company during the hour bulletin. I've been your anchor Irene Mwangi, and our sound language interpreter is Moses Gitonga. Do enjoy the rest of your evening, and thank you for watching.
Wanangojea siku hiyo yenye furaha ajabu. Machungu yote yatakwisha, mambo yote yatakuwa ni mapya.